think this kind of goes into the legacy talk because aBeZy is one of the greatest Call of Duty players in esports history. Like there's no doubt about that. Where you rank him is kind of irrelevant, but like he is a two-time world champion. He's pretty he's been pretty dominant. He was an MVP candidate for a few seasons. He's been very valuable to the most consistent team in the CDL's history. But he said that he doesn't want to retire until he's 30, which is kind of an insane comment just in general when you think about professional sports. But esports, this is like he is like I guess in esports or in COD esports more specifically, 30 is like 40 in the NBA. Like there are a few players that make it to 40 in the NBA, but there's not that many. And 30 is kind of that in COD. We saw Clayster, I think he was 31 when he retired. I think Crim6 might have been 30. We just saw Attach retire. He was in his late 20s. We look at Slasher like the old man in the league, and he is 28, 29. So 30 is kind of like, the age where it seems, it's not like a physical thing or like a motor skills thing. I think it's just life gets in the way and players prioritize different things once they get older, once they start getting married, start having children. And I think that's really what it comes down to. But aBeZy is 25 right now. So he would turn 30 in 2029. So you get 4 or 5 more seasons. What do you think about in general this early retirement age that we've seen? It's not only COD esports, but because I don't know who the oldest like top level pro is in esports. You would probably know better than me with League of Legends specifically, but I think it's a young man's game in general. So what do you think?
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. And Slasher turns 31 on September 2nd this
Okay.
year. So he's like he's definitely the oldest player actively competing right now. And I believe I saw earlier this year that aBeZy was either I think they said one of the stats Twitter said aBeZy is the second oldest SMG entering this year, and I believe TJ was the oldest. Um, so yeah, I think that's really just what we've seen over the years. There, I mean, even guys that you mentioned like Clay and Krim and stuff, they could still be competing if they wanted to. But really, it's just as these players get older, their priorities in life change, and they start wanting to potentially start dating, get married, have kids, have a house, etc., etc. Um, and the biggest thing with that is as they get older, they see it's not the same. I think I saw maybe Gunless tweeted something about it not too long ago. It's like, when you're younger, like especially when Call of Duty was in its prime, like, there were days where you just wanted to play COD for 8, 10, 12 hours a day and not get out of your chair and just sit there and grind and hang out with the boys and whatnot. But as you get older, your willingness to want to do that sort of changes, and
Yeah.
your life gets in the way, your priorities change, however you want to phrase it. So I do think that's the biggest thing. And I mean, someone like aBeZy, um with his, as good as he is, he could play really as long as he wants, in my opinion. um I do think his play style could in theory affect his, um I don't even want to say it because I don't want to put any bad juju on him or anything, but we've seen like hand injuries and stuff over the years with Zuma, and that, like, someone like aBeZy could in theory deal with that just because of how you know crazy and stuff his movement is on the map. But at the same time, I know a lot of the guys nowadays, and even the phase guys, they do like the hand stretches, and they take good care of themselves. So not even put that out there, but it goes to say, it is just something kind of crazy to think about, because it feels like just yesterday to me we're talking about aBeZy as this up and coming kid, the tiny terrors, him and Simp, and now we're looking at Simp's a little younger, but like, it's we're just a couple more retirements away from like the quote unquote old kids that are vets in the league being Dashy, Simp, aBeZy, these guys who were not too long ago like the fresh faces in the league, and that's the way of the road, but definitely a weird one to think about in my opinion.
Uh, it's really hard because esports, it's so different from traditional sports on a lot of different ways, but the reason that players retire is completely different in esports and traditional sports. Like there are physical injuries that
Yeah,
are suffered in esports. Zuma is a great example because he could have continued to play and he likely would have for at least a few more years, but he obviously had what was a thumb injury that he couldn't really push through. You know, he thought like maybe he could do like keyboard and mouse or something like that, but in the end it is physically demanding on players hands, but the biggest thing that has led to these, I would say, premature retirements is the burnout that these players suffer. Scump probably is the best example of this because Scump, I think, better than anybody else, like any of like the goats or the top 10 players of all time. I think like maybe Formal could be up there as well, but like Scump aged really really well in that his game did not fall off to a degree that we saw with other players that tried to stick around maybe a little bit too long. And maybe it would have, maybe Scump wouldn't have been as good when he's 29, 30, 31 years old. But at the same point, like he had this super high, consistent level of play for basically 12 years or so. But even he couldn't even get through the last season. You know, he said he's going to retire at the end of the 2023 season. He gets 2 months in and he retires. And that and he was in tears, like not only because he's retiring, but I think, and maybe I'm speaking out of school here, but like it seemed like I just can't take this anymore. I cannot
yeah,
put my mind through this. It's not about my body. It's I cannot mentally get through another Call of Duty game, another CDL season. Like this is ridiculous. And that is not something that we see a lot of times. We've seen it a little bit, but not very much with players in the NFL or the NBA where they get through a few months and they're like, yeah, I'm just done. Usually you see that with players that have kind of, you know, they're nearing the end. They're at their 40-year-old birthday or something, and they're like, all right, like I don't want to be away from my family anymore. I don't want to put my body through this. But a lot of times they still have the passion to actually play the game. They just don't want to put themselves physically through what they have to. And in Call of Duty, it's the mental aspect of it. Like they just don't want to mentally have to do it all over again. And I think part of that is roster changes at the end of the season. How how drastic these rosters can really alter themselves in a single summer or a single winter or whatever, because that doesn't happen in football all that often. Like you're still going to have most of the same teammates year to year in football. In basketball, it's obviously a smaller team, so there is a greater change that can happen. But you're still, you know, there's 15 guys on a basketball team, so you're probably going to have some consistency there. Year to year, these CDL teams can change kind of like all four of them or
oh yeah,
two, three of them. So like half of your team changes like in a split second. I think that really has something to do mentally as well because it's hard to get kind of attached and feel like this loyalty with these players nearly as much. And also just the games stink. Like the games are not as fun as they used to be. Part of that is getting older and your tastes change. And like you said, like you just have maybe even more patience when you're younger for the things that bother you about your favorite video games. But then when you get older, those same things or different things, but you know similar kind of small level things happen, and you're like, screw this, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm gonna go take a walk. I'm gonna go play with a dog. I'd rather not play this game again. And it's unfortunate, but you know, like that's how Call of Duty has kind of evolved or devolved based on your perspective of things.